Hey guys, welcome to Coffee with Megan, where I chat to people in the fashion industry who are using their platform for good. Today I'm talking to Anastasia Edwards-Morel. She works as a 3D fashion designer, and this is an area I previously knew nothing about, but it really is the way of the future for fashion design. And in a whole, it benefits the fashion industry by making the process of designing and sampling a much more environmentally friendly process. I hope you enjoy. Hey Stars!
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. I've been letting all our listeners know where people are in the world right now. So where are you in lockdown?
So I'm in the mountains in Colorado.
Not so bad. Quite a nice.
Not too bad at all. I'm very, very lucky.
So I'm so excited to talk to you about this because it's really something I have learned about through looking into this interview. And you work as a 3D designer. So this is really prominent right now, and I'm sure you've told me you're busier than ever. Let's explain for someone who doesn't know anything about 3D design exactly what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a 3D fashion designer specifically. Basically, I use digital tools to build garments within softwares. I work for a company called Clo 3D, and we are 2D pattern-based 3D software. And I discovered this medium in grad school and decided it was the future of fashion. And the company I'm with now is really groundbreaking and at the forefront of this field. And so basically, like an architect would model a house in digital tools before they actually go and build it, we can now do that with garments, thanks to soft draping technology and algorithms.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
just to explain the process, a fashion designer would come to you. Would they tell you, I want to make a dress and it looks like this, and then you would work off that? Or do they use the software, or just how does that process work? How does it start where you work with the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So 3D design is really asking processes to shift and change. So if you look at the fashion industry's processes, they haven't really changed much since the Industrial Revolution. And so to be a truly in 3D process, it's going to ask you to change the way you make it. So traditional fashion processes, you have a sketch, you get a sample made, you go through a few sample rounds, and then that's approved, and then you go to your final market sample. What you can do now is actually develop directly in 3D. So basically you're playing with geometry, 2D patterns in the software, building out your garment, getting photorealistic end results of that. And then you can do review and even fit sampling directly in the software. So nothing needs to be made until you're ready to make that product. And if you just think about, the impact of that on industry, it's huge. So now in 3D, you can start with blocks or previous styles that companies have made before and go directly in and start editing those shapes and those, products. And so it's kind of a new process and a new way of, maybe not new, but a better way of working within fashion processes.
So you will kind of be working with a company. Do you work with the brand the whole way through, or do you just show them how to use the software?
It really depends. So my job currently is I work with brands from the very beginning, showing them how the software works, which is what I really love about my job. I'm all the way through. I'll show them how the software works, and then we'll really get in there and understand what their needs are once they've decided to move forward with it. And then after that, we'll do implementation strategies. So we'll really look at how their company needs to use this and what's best practices to move forward. And maybe we start small, maybe we roll out a pilot. So it really depends on the company's needs.
Yeah.
But before COVID, people were starting small and conservatively, but we're definitely seeing an increase in speed to 3D at this point.
Amazing. And so the difference between 2D sketching is really the sampling process. And in the end, this has created a much more sustainable way of design, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And my interest in 3D really started, so my background before going to grad school was in artisan fashion. So I was doing really small artisanal making with, marginalized women groups around the world. And what I found amazing about it was I loved what it did, but I wanted to find out what I could do on a bigger scale to really impact the whole fashion industry as a whole. And so when I found 3D, I was like, well, this makes sense because you can really change the process. And if you cut down sampling and you're only making goods that are really going to go to market, the impact is immense.
Yeah, and even from experience of having to work with samples, you're cutting down that emissions of transferring them back and forth from maybe the countries they're made in, having to ship it or fly it somewhere, and those emissions are definitely cut down by this. Because I read also researching this that 90% of the time you can make the final product of just one prototype, right?
Yeah, and it depends on your product category or like, you know, where the company is at. But I think if you envision a future company that really has been agile and moved into this 3D space, you do your complete design development and finding fit issues and editing those, and then you go to one sample and then you're ready to go. But you know, yeah, it's interesting because our industry is a creative one, but it's not creatively minded in process. And so I think what's really, really, you know, I think there's so many articles right now coming out because of COVID about, you know, why the industry isn't willing to shift. But our clients really are. And I think that that's one of the best things about being in the 3D space is seeing, you know, brands come around and saying, okay, like we need to change. And as a sustainably minded designer, that's feeling, you know, you kind of just feel like we've finally gotten there. The conversation isn't just about greenwashing or having consumer facing choices. It's really about implementing real strategies to make change in our industry.
And why do you think maybe companies have been reluctant to do this?
Companies are huge. Yeah, I think it's just the bureaucracies of process. And I think, you know, there's so many different skill sets in fashion that are needed. And, you know, if you think about the true pattern makers, they're so hard to find, and they're such a gem of knowledge in our industry. And like, I think that there's this separation of what we do within, if you look at the way that companies are actually structured, you know, you have your tech designer here, you have your designer here, and, you know, they don't really talk or collaborate. And so I think just because the way it's structured, it wasn't structured in a way to be agile and move to new solutions.
Yeah. No, it's amazing to see that this shift is happening. And as you say right now, perfect timing. Other benefits as well from this technology, as in I read that the company can have more accurate data on the sizing of their customers. Could you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So because the garment is 3D modeled, all of the information is there. The data for your garment is already embedded within that one sample. So the difference between a sketch and a 3D model is you can do something with a 3D model, whereas a sketch is just a communication tool. And so the fit sizing, you know, there's more and more body scanning technologies coming out, and we will have a platform, you know, Chloe will have a platform launching that is really about using those 3D assets to fit on consumer bodies. And then you're able to truly design to your consumer body, not to a standardized size form. Because, I mean, if you look at the sizing that we use today, it's based off of a small survey that was done around that era of women at a campus. So it was privileged white women. And so if you look at that body sizing, that's where we are still standing in the standardized sizing. So, you know, there's a lot of talk about inclusive sizing, but really, I don't think brands have that access to that real knowledge. You know, they're basing their information off of returns, and that's how they're getting their information of what's not working. So I really, really am excited about the future of fashion, where we're really designing to who's buying your product.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. And in the end, it's gonna end up with less waste of clothes because people will be happy with them and they'll be buying the right size, right fit, and more. They'll be buying the product instead of it being wasted, and that's really awesome. Is it a software that's mainly available for already big companies that can use it? Is it complex in that way, or can new designers come, and is it available to them? Is it accessible?
So what I absolutely love about Chloe, and the reason why I dove into it, is I discovered 3D and I was really looking for a way to learn it. But the access to most softwares in industry are like thousands and thousands of dollars. They're enterprise pricing. There's not really a path for individual users to go forth. Chloe offers individual licenses. So I taught myself the program and started using it as a medium for my own creative practice as a designer. And so, as individuals, you're more like, you can download it. There's a 30-day free trial. And it's really user friendly. And we have all sorts of information online. So I would really encourage any designer out there that's interested in it to, look at our YouTube channels, try out the 30-day free trial, because this is the way of the future. And I believe, we work with a lot of academics. This will be taught in schools. So it's just a new skill that needs to be folded into the design.
No, that's awesome. So it is a perfect platform for a new designer, because if you think about it, it will be the way they'll have to work forward in the future. This is the next big thing coming in fashion. And is there any big names in fashion that you could name that are actually already using this kind of software?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really exciting is that you look at, like, we work with anyone from Louis Vuitton to Nike, and we're everywhere in between that. We have global offices, and so we were working with everyone in the industry. We're placed strategically to support them, and it's really amazing to see the difference of how the software is implemented, or how 3D design is really embraced by the fashion industry. I did mention that some brands aren't that agile, but some are. Some are really jumping in and really making changes and using it in really creative and interesting ways. And that's my passion as a designer, is really the future of how we interact with garments, what we do with garments. And you're seeing that brands are really pushing that envelope.
And when these brands, these big established brands like Nike and that, want to do this, is a lot of it coming from a knowledge that they know it will be more sustainable? Is that a big incentive for them wanting to do this new way?
I mean, I think it's sustainability. I think it's bottom line. I think it's time. There's no way of looking at this and it not being better for business.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the driving factor is, how do you cut down on protos? How do you cut down on that time that you need your sample sent back and forth from your factories? And so I think that's really the biggest, factor. And something that we really love to communicate is that what our hope is we're going to give time back to creativity, that you can actually design. Because the designer role across industry really isn't designing; it's communicating a product. So it's Illustrator flats or communication through line drawing. And so the time for design is really cut down just because of the sheer amount that designers have to do. Something that I like to say is that the fashion industry, as it currently stands, or before 3D, is a giant game of telephone. So you're trying to communicate from 2D to 3D to 2D to 3D across companies and countries and brands and vendors. And then all of a sudden at the end, you're hoping you get the sample that the original intent was. And so we all know when we play telephone, it never becomes what we want it to be. So this is just a way of having that true communication globally and throughout your whole process.
Yeah. So it's really it's benefiting design as well as sustainability and time, and that's an amazing thing. So it will give the company incentives with that, and then it's just saving the what our industry emits into the world, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there any trends you're seeing in terms of design right now, with working closely to companies? Is there any interesting trends?
I would say that what is interesting is what we were talking about a little bit before. It's fit. People are really interested in fit and how garments are fitting, or what that is for their consumers. So I think that's going to be a really big space that is emerging. It's just having clothes that are really more designed or structured towards their consumer. And that's something that, is bottom line a sustainability plus, and a true aspect of change that'll lead to better sustainable practices.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that's very important to me when I'm buying from a brand, is the fit. So I'm glad that's a good trend happening. Is there, you personally, what brand out there do you feel it doesn't have to be in fashion, it can be in anything, you just feel is doing it right?
That's really interesting. I honestly don't know if anyone is doing it 100% spot on, because I think everyone has such a different aspect. But I think when brands are transparent about sustainability and they say, we're trying this, but we're not there yet because we haven't figured out this puzzle piece. I really appreciate that as a consumer and a sustainably minded person. I really like performance wear. I really like athletic wear. But, I know that mixed filaments you can't recycle. And so there's this hard battle between wanting to buy and purchase sustainability, or purchase with sustainability in mind, but then wear the products you want. So I think with brands that are just saying, this is what we're doing now, but this is what we're going to try to do. Yeah, but I don't know if I can name anyone off
No,
the top of my head.
well, that's an honest answer. That's 100% how I feel about brands as well. I think transparency, instead of just trying to cover it up and just leaving a piece of information out that might not be right yet, I really appreciate that too. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you've learned while being in lockdown, while the country, I mean, I know you've been busier than ever, so it's not quite
Yeah.
the same as how I've been feeling, but is there anything you've learned?
I think that being, and going back to my own personal practices design, I'm always looking for what's next and what we need next. And I think that, we're in such a time of change right now that my mind was already of like, okay, what do we need? What do we need to be prepared for? I really like innovation. I really like research kind of design. And so during this period, I haven't really been shocked by the return or the need for 3D because I've already been in that mindset. So something that I've, chatted about with other people in industry is just about how do we continuously look forward to those next solutions and then build our practices as designers so that's easily implemented. And so that's something I'm constantly trying to figure out, how do we build great processes, and especially for these global brands, but that can still have change immediately implemented when, the world demands it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Finding those tools to actually make things happen.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And where can people go to learn more about everything you've been speaking about? Where can people go to read more about 3D design?
Yeah, so our website is a really great place to start. Also our Instagram, which is its.clo3d. On there, you're going to see a lot of user work, which are amazing. A lot of all the work that we post is from users. A lot of them are individual users that are just brilliant artists. If you hashtag Clo3D or anything like that, or hashtag 3D design, you're going to find that conversation, that community that are really posting incredible work. One of my favorite games is this real or is this 3D? And a lot of the times you'll see on Instagram, like you can't tell that it's a 3D model.
I know.
So yeah.
I know, it's actually crazy, especially because obviously it's part of my industry now. The 3D models,
Yeah.
The virtual models are taking over, but I actually find it a really interesting and exciting space.
Yeah, I think with modeling too, I was speaking with Heidi, who you had on, about what a 3D model of like how the modeling industry can communicate in it. That's an area that I'm personally really interested in, is how do we collaborate with people who are in the industry? Because 3D and moving into this new process isn't about replacing anyone's job. It's about a new type of collaboration. And I think that one of the beautiful aspects we're going to see in the next few years is that new type of collaboration between people who have been doing this art form as modeling or as designing or as photography or lighters, and that new type of collaboration that we're going to see in the digital space, but using those people's talents.
Okay.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Getting everyone's view of the world and putting it all into one little, and making it more inclusive as well, which is exciting.
Yeah, because you don't need to be on set to collaborate. We could collaborate from here, and I think that's one of the most beautiful ways. Yeah.
Perfect way to be doing right now in COVID.
Yeah.
Perfect for that. Hopefully, it doesn't last long enough to have to keep doing it in a couple of years.
Yeah. No, I hope we all get back to a life that everyone can have, support and jobs and all that.
Well, it was so good to talk to you, and thank you for an insight into this world. I think it's so interesting, and people will be really interested to see and now research from that. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.